Hi everyone, really good to see you all again. Well, after 4.5 years at the centre helping to try and make technology a reality, I've moved over to the supplier side. As you heard, I'm now Chief Operating Officer at System C and GraphNet Care Alliance. We're a British company. You've probably heard of the Medway PAS. We have CareCentric, which is a GraphNet product for shared care records. We have VitalPack, and we have Liquid Logic, which is the adults and children's social care software. So we cover quite a breadth of technologies across the sector. Through our Global Digital Exemplar project at Bristol, we're launching our clinical workspace today. So do come along to our stand of C70. Our team are here to show you what we're working on. It's a real opportunity for us to achieve the vision, which is to be a fully integrated EPR comparable to many of the Americans' software that have invaded our shores. And you'll find today in my talk there is a British theme, and I am flying the flag for British software and for the NHS in general. I also should say that I'm also one of the co-founders of One Health Tech. This is a network for women and girls exploring careers in health technology. There'll be more about that coming out, but from my position moving away from the centre, I'll be driving on and upwards more. We have 11,000 members, and the time and the space is right to really help our women and girls to forge meaningful and long careers in health technology. Now, since joining System C on the 1st of August, everywhere I look, someone is going live with technology. At Barking, they're going live with nursing EOBs, they've gone paperless. At Bristol, last week, went live with the EPMA, and Bolton have gone live with shared care records. I thought I'd do B's there, find as many towns as I could. The emergency care data set has also been a big change for us, and we're now live in over a dozen trusts. And child health also went live in London in 4 months. And it's not just us, it's not just System C and GraphNet. Everywhere we look, we've got some momentum now, and we're on the journey, and up and down the land, people are moving forward to get off paper and achieve what is my ambition and for a paper-free, a paperless NHS. Back in April, whilst at NHS Digital, I spoke at the eHealth Week, and I emphasised the importance of adherence to standards as a precursor to interoperability and to integration. And whilst I was NHS England, I pushed the supplier sector hard on interoperability, which, amongst other team members as well, led to the Tech UK Interoperability Charter. And we also sponsored Interoperability, which is now flourishing and established and being driven forward by the CIO community. So now that I'm on the supplier side, my belief in integration and interoperability are still very, very strong. But I now better understand some of the challenges and difficulties that we have from the supplier side in making this a reality, which I'll talk a little bit about today. Hopefully, everybody coming together will mean that we can actually achieve this for our patients. We all know that it's about transformation and revolution and change and so on, and not about technology. But where do we start? Especially those trusts that have struggled in the past to recruit the right skills and still have a long way to go. The Digital Exemplar programme has been quite divisive in this matter because it's giving money to those that are already doing it, and there are still many trusts that are talking to us about how do we start, where do we actually get going on this journey to revolutionise our care pathways and so on. My advice, as it's always been, is to start small, keep it simple, and build from there. But, and this is the important point, you need to lay out the vision at an appropriately transformational scale. So, at the moment, the life sciences industrial strategy is the big thing coming out of the centre. It's all about STPs, it's all about accountable care systems, and it's all about integrated health and social care. What the government are doing are creating the conditions and the environment for a digitally integrated health and care sector as a precursor to population health. But you need to be able to tell the story of what the tiny piece that you're doing fits into that. So although the GDE programme is looking to blueprint whole solutions, it's saying this solution that we've got in Bristol or this solution that they've got in Imperial, it's going to be transferred lock, stock and barrel. The reality is that we have a best-of-breed patchwork quilt of systems across the country, and operationally, we're never going to just be able to throw things away and lift. So integration and interoperability has to be the answer. And anyway, when you look at STP level, there is no one single system that actually does everything. We have a suite of products, but we don't do everything. We have to partner for some of our solutions, and that has always got to be the answer. So, as I've said before, we're never going to have one system across the country. We have to be able to integrate. So again, finding human words to explain at a strategic level why life will be better as a result of the digital transformation. Tell the story, break it down into bite-sized chunks, and considering again how things fit into this higher thing. And that will get the project off the ground. Your Skype MDT, your drug compliance alert, team-based clinical comms, bedside obs. Start small, bring your clinicians with you, and actually be able to tell that story about how it fits in to the wider transformation, ideally at STP level. And of course the funding is still only available in small amounts. So even if you have the story, you've still got to go with those bite-sized projects just to be able to get hold of the funding that's available, either internally or from the centre. And of course, once you've done that small start, embed the change. Follow through with the benefits realisation before you start the next stage. Remove the whiteboard off the wall, shred the paper, obviously after 7 years to make sure it fits in with legal requirements, etc. And take the fax machine to the Antiques Roadshow. I've decided the bonfire of the faxes will happen, but I've moved on now to Antiques Roadshow. I'm still going to drive forward to get rid of those fax machines. But document it. You know, again, it seems boring, but if you document the benefits, document the detailed steps, then you can walk that around the rest of the organisation, and then we will achieve the revolution. The next part of my talk really is to talk about reinforcing standards. NHS number, fire, SNOMED CT, DM&D, etc, etc, etc. Now at System C, we have been at pains to make sure that we keep in line with the standards development as it comes out from the centre. And they have made it clear that fire is the future, fire-based standards. But of course, what we need now is more detail. Sometimes I feel that the pace of the centre's ability to make announcements, and I am guilty of that. You know, I stood on this stage last year telling everybody, let's go fire, but we've got to be able to follow through with the detail. And so from the supplier side, I'm talking now to NHS Digital and NHS England to say, let's try these things out. How do we make these things a reality if we're going to move to a truly fire-based system? Now, we've always had HL7, and Marcus, who you may know, Marcus Bolton, who founded System C back in 1904, is always saying that we used to have HL7, but that was hard at the time. You know, getting people to actually adhere to that standard then was difficult. So we do need to keep pushing on it. We've got PDS integration, child protection information sharing, as I mentioned before, like emergency care data set, transfers of care, ERS, the list goes on and on. Our GraphNet and Liquid Logic products can map NHS numbers with existing IDs because, again, sometimes if organisations have not got the standard, we as suppliers need to be able to map, because being able to transfer the information at the boundaries of the organisation is actually what we're trying to do. So as we digitise, as we all digitise our medical records as a precursor for population health management, and we hear threats from the centre of disinvestment if we don't meet the standards, then we need that discussion at a sufficiently granular level. So many suppliers say, yeah, we do interoperability, we do integration, but do they really? Is that this version? How many versions do you have to upgrade to get it? You know, we need that level of detail. And the GDE blueprint at Bristol is allowing us to take integration to a new level at System C. We're using APIs and microservices to integrate in a much, much deeper way at our blueprint sites. And the idea that the UK is somehow falling behind America, I find frankly startling, and I'm not having it. Barack Obama stated in the last few months before he left that after the end of Meaningful Use programme, although £23 billion of fiscal stimulus had been put in, they did have high levels of digital maturity, and frankly, wouldn't we if we had £23 billion to spend on it? But, and I quote, US hospitals did less well when it came to interoperability and sharing patient data, with only 38% saying that they can use or integrate data from another hospital into their own EMR. Only this week on Twitter, our Secretary of State, Jeremy Hunt, said we would never want the US health system here. The UK is not the US, and we, the wider UK-based health sector, are at the forefront of standards development, of fire standards development, and I believe that the US can actually learn from us, and we need to be confident and stand up and keep driving forward to actually prove that. I'll get off my soapbox now. So, clinically delightful and by design and usability. So Bob Vactor told us, and he is an American that I actually do admire, and I do feel that we could learn from Bob Vactor. He's got the scars, he's actually done the work himself. He told us to reimagine solutions. It's not enough just to make information available to the clinician. We're seeing that. You can't just bombard them or put it in any which way that suits the system. The information architecture needs to consider the working day of the clinician or the day in the life of the patient or the carer. So in the context of a busy day, we need to make the user journey clinically delightful by engaging them, preempting carefully, again, you have to be careful not to bombard them, and offering up insights as part of the workflow. But meanwhile, the legal, organisational, administrative and bureaucratic requirements that our system dictates around RTT, bed status, clinical coding for PBR, triggering follow-up appointments, etc., all still need to be delivered. And so boosted by our GDE status and supported by Bristol, Whittington, North Middlesex, Gateshead and other of our clients in the UK, we are now re-architecting the System C solution so that we can present a workspace that is clinically delightful, but at the back end it still does all the bureaucratic and boring things that are required of us in the NHS. That is the standard that the GDE has set for us and all the suppliers, and that is how we're going to make sure that we stay ahead in terms of the standards and requirement. So, as I said, I don't want to. It feels awkward for me to be overly selling System C and GraphNet, but it is my job, and I am paid to do that now. And we do have a stand, and we do have software that I strongly believe in, and many of our clients do as well. So, e-observations, nursing assessments, handovers, and basic clinical noting, we believe will get some clinicians live, albeit on their existing PAS, and the PAS work with single sign-on and two-way integration actually takes a bit longer. We can get our PAS live in 12 months. Sometimes that's too long. Let's just get people starting small with the clinical workflow and then take those clinicians on a journey, as I've said before. And our GraphNet care-centric product provides the continuity of care beyond the organisational boundaries and is enabling true place-based care for our service users. One of the things we do well is we work with health economists to secure data sharing agreements to store and present the patient information for direct care. That's really important. Many organisations talk about viewing and sharing information on a view only, but we believe that data store is quite important because it allows you to put algorithms in to add alerts or push notifications. I guess the point is that if, for example, in a winter pressure scenario, you're relying on people remembering the patient, logging in and finding the patient, that's not going to be as effective as a push notification that tells you there's a problem here, Mrs. Smith's just been admitted to hospital, don't go to her house to give her for the home visit, etc., etc. And so those architectural considerations need to be thought about before you invest in the technology. What is the longer term future that you're actually looking to deliver? So, I've got my new big Papi. All I want to say really is moving from a policy and enablement role in the centre in NHS England, NHS Digital, to actually working on the front line in a delivery role has actually been really transformational for me. I get to see the ambition through to fruition. It's harder. I have to work and engage every day with organisations to help them understand what the benefits are, help them work through business cases, rather than just in the centre trying to, make things happen, getting the Secretary of State and Treasurer to give us the money. And it's right that the centre should continue to challenge and push NHS organisations to go digital. But I know how hard it is, you know how hard it is, it's complicated, and we are achieving it. The overarching message here is start small and build. Choose systems that are clinically delightful, that integrate, allowing shared records at STP or ACS level, and that just feels right. It just feels like the right decision to go. But headlines that say that we're not good enough does reduce morale, and I think that could also hinder our export ambitions. Healthcare UK are busy selling UK digital health around the world to Australia, Brazil, the Middle East, who are crying out for help from UK companies who frankly already done this. So I don't think it's right to say that we are not as good as other parts of the world, and I just really want to reinforce that. Remember, you are proving it, and we can all continue. We're all doing this, and we'll continue to do it every day. Thank you very much.
Is this on? Look at this, Beverley. You're like Robbie Williams, who left the band, and you're even more popular.
Yeah, I love
it. Interoperability. The question was asked of me earlier, actually. They said, hey, what happens when suppliers, they don't exactly play the ball on interoperability. They talk the talk, but they're awkward, they're slow, they're still building proprietary closed systems. Have you got any advice for us on how we deal with those kind of people as NHS body and customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I used to argue with Frank at TPP all the time, but when we actually agreed on stuff, it was when we got into the detail. When we at the centre didn't just say in platitudes, do fire, please do this, please do that. We actually got into the weeds and understand the complexity and the detail. There's also a commercial point as well. Many organisations like ours have invested in what was the right thing to do at the time to achieve interoperability, when frankly some of the detail from the centre hadn't been worked out yet. And there is a fear. Everybody's frightened on the supplier sector across the world, not just the British companies, that we will end up on the wrong side of the national debate. If somebody in the centre wakes up, somebody like I used to, and says, we're actually going to have this now as the standard, then that could render your software defunct overnight. Now, most of the NHS realise that actually we've got to work together on it. So it's not acceptable for suppliers to say we're not doing interoperability, but I urge both sides to get the architects in the room, get in the detail and hammer it out.
Thank you. Right, we've got plenty of time for questions from the floor, so does anyone want to go first? Andrew, I'll bring the mic over.
Hi, Andrew Fenton, SCW, CSU. Thanks, Beverley. I suppose my question is fire interoperability enough? I mean, clearly it will be a great progress to go down the route you've outlined, but in a system-wide context across, say, STPs or ACSs, where you're trying to support population health management, risk modelling, segmentation, etc., clinical decision support, isn't the natural conclusion effectively around moving towards open platform architectures in addition to fire interfaces?
In an ideal world, we would already have all the standards defined. Everybody would have built it into their software, and we'd be off and running. We're not. What the open platforms do is allow full visibility to allow that mapping to happen, and of course, that can only be welcomed. We're doing it anyway, so what GraphNet CareCentric does, it's required just by the product to integrate with all of the systems that are in a health economy. So we've worked out how to do it, to create a master patient index and pull, close to real time as possible and needed, the information that is all clinically valid and goes back to the right place. So it has already been done. If someone in the centre says, this is now the standard, we'll map it. That won't be difficult. We'll be able to adhere to it. So the plea is, don't wait for somebody in the centre. Don't think you can't do anything just because the standards have not been adhered to. And again, the open platforms, if it moves people forward, then absolutely.
Keep going. Any more? Can't believe it. So Beverley, do you think the open platform has a place to play in what you're doing at the moment with System C's products? Do you think are you interested in things like open EHR, or we know about fire and people talk about fire all the time, but any work going on with the open platforms really that Andrew was talking about?
Yeah, so the open air platform allows, as far as I understand it, it allows the patient record to persist and be shared across health economies, which is very similar to our GraphNet product, to be honest. What we're really keen on is deep functionality. So when you've got a record that can be shared, what are you going to do with it? What's the actual function it's going to be? So yeah, we're happy to work with them, but I feel like, I don't want to be too scathing, but population health management is a fantastic dream that we need to get to, but we've still got trusts on paper. So you're not going to end up with population health management if you haven't got a detailed record from which to pull it. So my interest at the moment is on getting as many trusts live and off paper as possible as a precursor to that. Have I dodged the question well enough there?
I think so. It's awkward, isn't it? Because some of these things are very new technology, aren't they?
Yeah.
So as you said in your presentation, fire, we announced things, fire is going to be the standard, but we're still really waiting for traction. So it's hard to see who the vanguards are going to be. And I agree with you, start small. I think people, will act as vanguards and go ahead and do some of this stuff. And then eventually it'll be adopted. So I don't know what people think. Any more on the floor? Question at the back there. Lou. I'll bring the mic over, mate.
I just wanted to raise the question to you, Beverley, about interoperability and diversity and inclusion, because it seems to me, I've done a lot of work in the on the Interop forum with Amir and Luke and Aidan, these guys, but getting women involved in interoperability for some reason is really challenging, whether it's a historical thing. Hey Joss, good shout out there. So can you give your take on trying to get some more women involved and what that might bring to interoperability and health tech in general?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the One Health Tech movement that myself, Louise and Maxine set up a few years ago, we kind of do it in our evenings and weekends, and it's been amazing. We've now got 11,000 members, and we're just hitting on a sweet spot. Women want to be involved in this stuff. They've got the skills. We just need to encourage more in it. And it's not just an interoperability point, Lou. It's on all aspects of technology and data. We need to reach out. We need to not say, if you're interested in interoperability, come and join us. It's all corners. of health tech that actually we need to be reaching out on. And I'm spending more time on it now since I've joined System C, helping to drive that movement forward. Because as we all know, this is hard, and we need the best people to be on it. And if we're not fishing from a wider, diverse pool, we're frankly not going to do it. John? John's got his hand up.
Beverley, as a gamekeeper turned poacher, what would you have done differently? If you could go back to your time at NHS Digital, NHS England, one thing with your new perspective you could change?
I've actually been stunned to silence now.
Would you have invented the flux capacitor?
Yeah. On the second round of technology funds, I would have got all the money out before September. Is the one thing that we spent the summer consulting with the wider CCGs and the wider sector to understand what people wanted, and in doing so, banged into winter when it was time for the money to go out. And with hindsight, I would have got the money out the door between April and September and not lost some of it through for winter.